and is a wonderful presenter. Liz has worked as a direct mail consultant since 1999, creating messaging, strategy, and personal direct mail for local, state, and federal campaigns in 42 states. 2007, she became the first woman to start her own direct mail company with no business partner. Liz has won 26 Polly Awards, which is a huge deal, y'all. I was with the team that was up for one once, and we had a party. We thought we were really cool because Liz has won 26 of those awards. Liz has been a guest on Larry King Live, CNN American Morning, CNN International, The O'Reilly Factor, Hannity, Fox, Election Headquarters, Fox Business News, FoxNews.com, Sun News, MSNBC, and C-SPAN. She's a former adjunct professor at American University and George Washington University. Liz has lectured at Georgetown, Howard, the University of Iowa, the University of North Carolina, UT Austin, and the University of Virginia. She is currently the Democratic Program Director for the Women's Campaign School at Yale. She's taught there since 2005. Liz is pulling double duty this weekend. She is also leading workshops at other campaign schools, and she was gracious enough with her time and energy to come back to help us out here at the Annette Strauss Institute, to which we are forever grateful, Liz. I could go on and on about how absolutely amazing Liz is, but I would rather give her as much time as I can. But I'd like to leave on the note that Liz's career began as a volunteer coordinator for Texas Governor Ann Richards. And that is a job that so many folks on this call could find themselves on in the near future and one day wind up winning 26 Polly Awards. With that being said, Liz, I'm going to hand the spotlight over to you and the show. I'm afraid you're muted, Liz.
Mute myself. Sorry. See, but I just want to tell you all, here's my degree from 150 million years ago, but hook 'em horns. I will do anything for the University of Texas at Austin. So it is my pleasure to be here today. So excuse me, Cole, do you want me to share screen? Is that how we want to do this? You tell me.
Please, yes ma'am. If you could share your screen and run your show, I will make sure you are the video in the top right-hand corner.
You got it. All right, here we go. And yes, this is my second one of these today. It's been super fun. So first one went really well. I hope the next one goes just as well. Okay, so I have heard a rumor from Nancy Bosker. There are over 200 people on this, Cole.
We had 300 folks sign up.
That is amazing. I don't know if you're all University of Texas students, but regardless, if you are all Texans, we are all family, except for the Aggies. That was a joke. So I was born and raised in Houston. For those of you who care, I went to Lamar High School a million years ago, graduated from the university in 1990. Yeah, long time ago. I don't care how old you were. And I started my political career, as Cole said, as a volunteer coordinator in 1994 in Houston for the re-election of Governor Ann Richards. It was a particularly tough year. We lost everything, but I learned a lot. And in 1995, I moved to Virginia, worked on a state legislative race, went to work in 96 for a man named Mark Warner, who first ran for U.S. Senate and lost in 96. And so on and so on and so on. And here we're 25 years later, and I have won, thank you, Cole, a whole bunch of awards. I've owned my own direct mail firm here in the greater DC area since 2007. I was actually the first woman to do so without a business partner, out of, frankly, pure naivete and sheer will. And I am here today to talk to you all about direct mail. I was just speaking to a group of veterans who, through the Veterans Campaign, so about budgeting. So it's fun. Now I'm going to switch over into direct mail. So one last question, Cole, how do you want to handle questions? You tell me. I can't see the chat. Do you want to filter them out yourself? Do you want to have students pipe up? I'm fine being interrupted. What works best for you?
I will popcorn in with questions as they show up in the chat, and I'll wait for a lull. And if you want to give pause, I can also interject whenever you're ready for it, and I'll throw questions your way.
That sounds great. So anyone, I know there are a whole bunch of you out there, which is terrific, but if anyone has burning questions, please let Cole know. He will ask me. I have no problem answering questions as we go. It's probably more productive for everyone. So, all right, real quick. Hey, could someone close the door? See, we're still on video conference. It's live television. All right. So let's start with 5 important things to know about direct mail. All right. Number 1, direct mail is all about targeting. And what I mean by that is it is used best when it is working with, for instance, small races with small vote goals. What does that mean exactly? Well, if you haven't learned already, your vote goal is probably your single most important number that you're going to deal with. In my opinion, there are 2 crucial numbers when you want to win a campaign. Number 1, how many votes do I need to win? Your vote goal. And number 2, how much is that going to cost? I'm not here today to talk about fundraising. My strength is spending the money, but fundraising and knowing how much you can raise and need to raise is crucial. Like I said, I just got off a call teaching candidates about budgeting. Separate discussion, happy to have it with any of you, but knowing what your budget is just as important as knowing how much money you need to raise. And it all begins with, how many votes do I need to win? Most state legislative races across the country, state house or state senate, need about 10,000 votes to win, on average. Most congressional races need between 150 and 200,000 votes to win, on average. Those are big differences. Now, some city council races need 5,000 votes to win. Some city council races, say in Houston, need 1 million votes to win. Knowing your vote goal will determine so many things about your campaign. How much money you need to raise, what your media mix is going to be, AKA, do I need television? Can I do it with only mail? Will I need some radio? Will I need digital advertising? What is my best media? Which brings me back to, mail is best with small races and small vote goals. Why? Because mail works off of voter file data. And voter file data has addresses. So that allows mail to talk to certain voters and completely ignore other voters, thus maximizing the dollars that you're sending. Or excuse me, the dollars that you're spending on your mail. The last thing you want to do in a campaign is waste money talking to someone who's never going to vote for you. Now, there's going to be some of that. But if you're a Democrat and you're running a Democratic campaign, you're probably not going to want to talk to hardcore Republican primary voters. You're probably never going to win them. The same is true if you're a Republican. You don't really want to talk to hardcore Democratic primary voters. You're not going to win them. Mail helps you focus your communication only on those voters that you think you can win and ignore the ones that, frankly, no matter what you do, you're probably not going to win. Number 2, specific message to a subgroup. What does that mean? Well, sometimes if you're running a much larger race, a congressional race, a statewide race where your vote goal is 100, 200, 300,000 people, maybe more. Certainly statewide in Texas, you're looking at probably a vote goal of what? 5 to 8 million, maybe more. That's a big vote goal. Your primary medium in those cases is going to be television. As I just said to the veterans, television is like an A-bomb, right? It comes in and destroys everything. But mail is a lot more like your ground troops, right? We only want to go house to house. We don't want to kill necessarily everybody. Remember, I just talked to veterans, so I apologize. Having said that, sometimes I come in as a mail consultant underneath the larger television message, and I only talk to, for instance, maybe seniors, voters over 65, who in Texas can vote absentee with no excuse. Maybe I'm only speaking to African American or Latino voters. Maybe I'm only speaking to younger voters or to women. Mail can come in underneath a larger message and target a subgroup. Then there's the expensive media market, of which there are plenty in Texas. So I'm not really here to talk a whole lot about television, but I'm happy to take questions on it. Suffice it to say, the Houston media market, well, let me back up. Houston, San Antonio, and Dallas-Fort Worth are some of the most expensive television markets in the country. Communicating on network television, the big four, and yes, people still watch them, is incredibly expensive in those areas. You may not want to communicate or frankly have the money to communicate on television in those expensive markets, in which case mail may be your best option. And then finally, GOTV, get out the vote. When you're trying at the end of a campaign to mobilize, persuade, and motivate only your voters that you've identified as being for your candidate, Mail allows you to only talk to those voters to remind them to go vote. So mail is about targeting. Now, we're going to have some fun. I actually eliminated this next slide from my previous presentation. I was kind of bummed. So I'm glad I get to do it here. So I love to do this with the state of Colorado because number one, I love Colorado. I spend a lot of time there. Number two, it's square and easy to draw. So let's go through this. As you can see, the state of Colorado is sort of intersected north to south by Interstate 25. Not coincidentally, that interstate also runs right up against the mountains, if you've ever been there. And all the big cities are right there on that highway, right up against the mountains. They're called the Front Range. I do this because, see that red box right here? That is the Denver media market. That means if you live within that red box and you turn on your nightly news, it's going to be about Denver, even though you technically live in Boulder or parts of Fort Collins or parts of Colorado Springs, you're going to get Denver. That's an important point. So if you are running for governor of Colorado, what's your most important medium and why? And by governor, that means every registered voter in the state of Colorado could vote for you. Anybody want to chime in? Or with 200 of you, should I just tell you the answer? All right, I'll tell you the answer. It's television. Why? Because look how many people you can talk to, right? You can actually talk about an A-bomb. You can talk to about 70% of the electorate in the state of Colorado at once by advertising on Denver media. So even though it's probably about $300,000 a week to be on Denver media, maybe more, still is worth it. It's the right thing to do if you're running for governor. But what if you're running for the 2nd Congressional District? That's this one down here. See this pink box? P.S. Trick question, okay? What if you're running in this district? Would you want to be on Denver media? Or would you want to choose a different medium? Mail, radio, phones, digital. Well, door-to-door is a little tough these days, but let's pretend there is no pandemic door-to-door. Anybody want to take a stab? Okay, it's still television. Why? Because look at all these voters in Denver. Look at all these voters in Colorado Springs. They're still watching Denver television. About 60% of your electorate in the 2nd Congressional CD still watching Denver media. It's still worth the money. But you got a big problem down here in Pueblo. Pueblo is a pretty decent city, and if you're a Democrat, a lot of Democratic voters in Pueblo. So you can't forget about it. But here's the fun. If you live in Pueblo, Colorado, you watch Albuquerque, New Mexico television. Do we want to be on Albuquerque, New Mexico television? No, because no one in New Mexico can vote for us. We're running in this congressional district. Mail really comes in handy. Maybe some radio even, because you can target it specifically to the voters you need coming out of Pueblo, not waste any money on those pesky New Mexicans, okay? Last, if you're running for State Senate District 20, see this little blue box right in the middle of Denver? What's your most important medium? I suspect some of you want to say television. How could you not? Smack dab in the middle of Denver. But that would be a mistake because you only need to talk to the people who live within the boundaries of State Senate District 20. If you put it up on TV, you're talking to people in Boulder. They're pretty much like the New Mexicans in this case. Doesn't matter how much they like you, they can't vote for you. What you need in this district is mail. Probably not even radio, because Denver radio is going to talk to too many people as well. All mail all the time. Frankly, 80%, maybe even 90% of state legislative races across the country, mail will be the primary form of communication. But in most statewide races, 90% of the time, television will be the most effective form of communication. Congressional races, it completely depends, and it's usually a pretty good mix. So I'm going to take a breath and ask if there are any questions about this. Hearing none. All right.
At the moment.
Okay, moving on. So a lot of people still ask me in this era of the internet and iPhones and Instagram and everything else, is mail really still relevant, right? I mean, let's be honest, Pony Express, USPS, I mean, this is pretty antiquated stuff. But it's because mail has the ability to target specific and individual voters based on the voter file data that mail is actually still very relevant. Now, let's go back and talk a little bit about voter files. So every state in America, save one, has a voter file. Anybody know which one? North Dakota, because 3 people live there. Just kidding. 658,000 people live there. But, you know, they don't have a voter file. But all other 49 states, you have to register beforehand to vote in the state. And as you all are probably aware, there are all kinds of deadlines around that. And in certain states, a lot of restrictions in terms of past felonies, et cetera, on whether or not you can register. But in general, if you are a United States citizen and you are over the age of 18, you are allowed to register to vote. The state will collect all of that information and make it public. I, and people like me, buy this information and frankly, add on to it. It's so amazing right now, which brings me to modeling. I'll go back up to number 3. Modeling has completely changed the way voter files work. It used to be whatever was on the file was on the file. For instance, let's talk about Texas. There are about half the states in the country that do not register by political party. Texas is one of them. So in Texas, there are only 4 pieces of foundational information on the voter file: your name, your address, your age, because of your birthday, and your gender. That's it. Everything else is optional. Email, phone, they don't even ask about political party. So prior to about 2006, it was very difficult as a campaign consultant to go into a state like Texas and know, where are my Democrats? Where are my Republicans? You could look at primary voting, and that would give you about 25%, but the rest was unknown. Until between 06 and 08, modeling really changed the game. Analytics, all the things that you all probably take for granted, actually only showed up about 10, 15 years ago, and we were able to start crunching data in a completely different way. And now I have access to everything from partisanship models to models on environmental preferences. Are you pro-environment, or perhaps not so much? Are you pro-choice, or are you pro-life? Are you pro-gun rights, or not so much pro-gun rights? I have models on almost everything. Do they work? Pretty good. Are they perfect? No, nothing's perfect. Data's never perfect, but they are good enough so that I can literally put mail into the hands of people and know so much more about them than they really probably want me to know. And it really allows me to make my messaging even more robust. As you see in this next one, it's not that email doesn't work or that online ads don't work. It's that they all have the potential to be blocked. Television commercials, you can turn them off. You know, door to door is unfortunately right now not available. It is still, however, the single best way to win a vote. So I do want to put a pin in that. For all of you out there learning how to run campaigns, meeting a voter face-to-face is the best way to win a vote. Always has been, and I believe always will be. Unfortunately, right now, we're at a time where it's very difficult to meet people face-to-face, and it's changing all the campaign dynamics this year. But I want to make that point to you because hopefully that won't be so during every campaign. And I want to make sure that people understand door-to-door still key, okay? All right, let's take a look at this. This is what I mean by, yeah?
Real quick, Liz, with 2 questions. First, a participant asked if you could make your screen full screen, your presentation. Just as a
so fancy. It's so fancy. I'm just kidding, that was a joke. Yes, I can do that. Is that better?
I think they mean in terms of like the slideshow. Do you like run it like a?
If I do that, I can't see anything from Zoom.
I
mean, I can. Here, you want me to play it?
I think that's what our participant asked. But
Okay.
while we're doing this,
how that goes. I gotta catch up. How's that? Is that better?
See if Samantha, if Samantha dropped it in the chat, if that's what you were looking for. Also, where do you find that voter data, question on text, the voter data that you add on to? So Tyler discussed in our last presentation about where he gathers that like state garnered data, that county created data. When you say you're getting down to the nitty gritty, you're finding out if folks like dogs or like cats, where do you find that data?
You know, I wish I had the data on dogs versus cats. That'd actually be a lot of fun, Cole. Thanks. But I appreciate that. So, trying to figure out the best way to tell you all this. The truth of the matter is that modeling is incredibly proprietary. On the and not shockingly, very partisan. And what I mean by that is the state collects, obviously, the 4 foundational points of voter file data. They make it available for sale, as do the counties. You can go buy that foundational information from your county party, or excuse me, your county board of elections. But you want all the bells and whistles, you're gonna have to pay for them. And what I mean by that is on the Democratic side, and I'm not as familiar with the Republican side, and I apologize, it's just I'm a Democrat, but I know a little bit. So let me start with the Democrats. It's all proprietary consulting firms. There are several firms, Catalyst, Civis, Target Smart Van. They make their money by building models in different states based on that data, and they sell them to campaigns. They sell models. But truthfully, on the Democratic side, in 2004, pardon the history lesson, but I find it interesting, former DNC Chair Howard Dean invested in a system called VAN, V-A-N, Voter Access Network, that has since merged with another company called NGP, which at the time was really fundraising, tracking, and filing software. That company is now called NGP VAN, and every state party, Democratic state party in America, has access to their voter file data with all of the party modeling on it. So if you are running for any office in any state in America, except for North Dakota, because they don't do this, right? But in all 49 other, let's talk Texas. I am working on some races in Texas right now. You go to the Texas Democratic Party, you say, I am running for, or I am working for someone who is running for running for office as a Democrat, wherever, from Mejia to Houston to El Paso, and the Texas Democratic Party will sell you for a couple of $100 access to their state party van data, and you will get all the bells and whistles. Republicans, this is an excellent question for your Republican, the Texas Republican Party and the local Texas county parties, but I am confident, because the Republicans, particularly in Texas, are very smart, that they have a similar voter file for sale that has similar bells and whistles. I believe, I can't remember the name of it, there was the National Republican Party did something, had a name for their voter file system, because frankly, they were trying to do for their state parties what Van did for Democratic state parties, and I can't remember the name, but Cole, you know who would know? Is Jennifer Sarver, since she ran for Congress as a Republican, and is an old and dear friend, believe it or not, folks. I guarantee you she will be able to share with Republicans what the Republican data source is. But I also promise that the state party of Texas and or the local county party, Republican county parties, will also be able to tell you. But it's very partisan. I mean, this data is gold, right? Being able to target more efficiently, being able to identify, as Cole pointed out, who likes cats and who likes dogs. Let's be honest, who's a real Republican, who's a real Democrat, and who's not so sure? That is the key to success or failure in a campaign. So parties keep that information pretty close to the vest and only share it with like-minded candidates. Does that make sense, Cole?
Absolutely. That was a wonderful answer and an awesome Van history lesson. Thank you for that. I did not know. We have another question from Marcy. How do you send mass amounts of mail? Do you work with your local post office? There are Must have noticed that her local post office has limits on how many pieces of mail can go out per person per week. How do you blast mailboxes, not inboxes?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer it in a couple of slides. So can I put a pin in that one?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, let's get through this just real quick. This slide is just to show when I say accuracy. See how your voter's in the middle, your individual voter. Mail is the blue ring. Makes sense, right? Because I have that voter's home address, can literally try to speak to just that voter. Heck, I can ignore their neighbor if I want. But as you see the rings go out, the accuracy gets lessened. Doesn't mean it's necessarily less effective. It's simply less accurate. What I mean is TV and radio, the largest red outer ring, they only have a 5 to 10% accuracy, but that doesn't mean that they're bad all the time. It goes back to, if you have 100,000 voters to win, or God forbid, in the state of Texas, 10 million voters to win, you will be on television, because it's not about accuracy, it's about racking up huge numbers of votes. But if you are running for state legislature in the state of Texas, you will be in the mail. It will be too expensive and too inaccurate and too inefficient to be on television. Okay, so moving forward. Sorry. All right, this goes back to, I hope, the beginning of discussing with that young woman about mail. Mail takes planning, okay? So my point is, I don't blast out people with mail. In fact, the post office, which I have a pretty good working relationship with, the post office is always trying to get me to use this thing called something visibility. Like, you know, basically everybody gets a piece of mail. But I don't want to send a piece of mail to everybody. In fact, that's exactly what I don't want to do. I only want to send mail to the voters I need to win my campaign. So while I appreciate the point around my carrier or my local post office will only process so much a day, I don't want to send mail to everyone. I only want to send mail to very specific people. I want to send it potentially, let me be honest, and I am working on some legislative races in Texas this year. As I build out my mail plans for these particular candidates, I'm looking primarily at 2 sets of voters. I am looking at swing voters, people who on a partisanship score, goes back to modeling, are scoring between 35, and 70. Let me put a pin in that. Let's talk about a partisanship model. Partisanship models were the very first thing to get created in modeling, and they're very good. What does that mean? It means there are, and I'm not kidding you, in the Texas partisan model on the Democratic side, there are over half a billion pieces of information from consumer files, past voter files, national voter files, 30 years of voting in Texas. I can't even tell you how much data is poured into these models to predict who is a Democrat and who is a Republican, and then who is everyone in between. Because it's a Democratic model, it's 0 to 100. 0 is a good Republican, sorry Republicans, and 100 is a good Democrat. And by good, I mean like super, super, super. I will hopefully if I was on the Texas file, I'm not, I live in Virginia, but if I was on the Texas file, I'd be a 100. At least I hope so. I always vote in primaries. I'll never vote for Republicans. I'm a hardcore Democrat. There are plenty of people who would be zeros. Probably some of the people I went to high school with would be zeros. They are hardcore Republicans and they'll never change their mind, and that's fine. And then there are all the shades in between. So the partisanship model is scored 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100. So when I look at a partisanship model in my Texas races, I am guessing that my swing voters are scoring between 35 and 70. That means there are probably a few lean Republicans, few lean Democrats, but mostly there's a whole lot of people in between that we either don't know or they don't know. And that's a huge target for me. The second target is low propensity voting Democrats. They have lots of names. They are called base expansion voters. They are called high opportunity voters. I'm a Democrat, remember? But the truth of the matter is there are people who are probably scoring over 80, maybe even over 90, but they haven't voted consistently over the last 5 years. And we really need them to show up in 2020. That is probably my other big universe of mail. And the truth is, guys, they're probably on different messages, and I'm going to build different mail plans to go to those 2 universes. Are they going to talk about the same things? I don't know. Depends on what my poll says. But truth, probably not. So I don't want to mail everybody. I just want to talk to the people I need to win. If I'm a Republican, by the way, and I'm running this year, I'm doing the exact opposite. I'm looking for lower propensity voting Republicans, scoring high but not consistent voting, as well as swing vote. For the record, it's one of the ways Donald Trump won in 2016. He energized a large number of high scoring Republicans who had inconsistent voting history. Honest to Pete, he did. And he did it in crucial states. And that's a little bit of why the polling was so off. They weren't in our poll screens because they don't normally vote. So we didn't see them coming. You got to hand it to him. So we're trying, obviously, as Democrats, to sort of do the same thing. In 2018, we did a lot of it. As you can see, in some places it worked more than others. 2020, it's going to be the same battle. The truth of the matter in 2020, both at the presidential level and I think all the way down to the state legislative level, the battle is not for the people who always vote. The battle will be for the people who sometimes vote, which is a very different battle. So I drop mail every 2 to 3 days, and I'm going to show you a slide in a minute to explain why. But this is a little controversial for some people, but it's important. I start at Election Day. This year is November 3rd, and I look at the last Thursday before Election Day, which I believe is October 28th. That will be my last drop date for mail in 2020. I'm going to throw a party for Halloween because for the last couple of years, Election Day has been really late, and so Halloween we were still working. It was a bummer. I digress. I've had a lot of coffee. So I will drop on the 28th, and then I'll work backwards every 2 days per week. Why? I'll show you in a minute. And look, it needs to be repetitive, no less than 1 a week. If you can't afford to do more than 1 a week, then you're either gonna, you got a problem because you have to build repetition within a voter's mind. And this is a big one. A successful mail program has a plan. And by a plan, even if it's just a schedule of pieces and when they will drop and what they will be about, and subject, healthcare, number of voters mailed, 10,000, date dropped, October 28th, that's better than nothing. But the truth is, in my mail plans, I write out every word before I go into production. We can talk about that. That's a big document, but I find it important. All right, here's why. I stole this from the DCCC a few years ago because it was very helpful. This is a test that they did
Liz,
in which it's about.
Are you
Sure.
still on the voter bullseye slide on your end?
Oh, I am on one that says logically effective first 1 or 2 mailings wears off after time.
We have a problem. We are frozen on a screen where your mouse is clicking play from start. So maybe we should just go back to that screen and work off of what we had before. I have nothing else.
If I say resume share, does that work?
If you click use slideshow, that should work for us.
Use slideshow. You got it.
Let's hope. Oh, there we go. We're on 3. Mail takes planning.
Well, I apologize. This is what I was just talking about. So,
Perfect.
Are we good, Cole?
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Sorry about that, guys. All right, mail takes planning. Let's do this real quick. 10 business days for a good piece of mail. I'm not kidding you. It takes me 10 days. Drop every 2 to 3 days. Needs to be repetitive. And a successful mail program has a plan. So I just went over all of this. And of course, you all will get this slideshow. I want to be clear. All right? But let me show you why you need repetition. Did that work? Are we on the DCCC slide? Rock and roll.
Yeah.
So I stole this from the D-Trip. And it's a test in which they measured or attempted to measure the recall of a piece of political mail amongst an electorate. And what you can see is in 0 to 2 days, you get about 9% recall. That's not bad. But after 3 to 6 days, it's cut in half. And after 7 days, AKA a week, it's -3. In other words, nobody remembers what they got in the mail last week. I don't remember what I got in the mail last week. I don't remember what I got in the mail 3 days ago. In order to build repetition in a voter's mind in the mailbox, you have to go every 2 to 3 days so that you stay fresh, so that they know what you're talking about. It's the same theory that you have with television ads. You very rarely, outside of the Super Bowl, see a television ad once. Because if you did, nobody would remember it. So, are there any questions about mail and its need to drop repetitively? Okay, moving on. What is a mail plan? What is a mail plan? I have my candidates ask me all of this all the time. It is a multi-page document laying out the entire strategy. Most of my mail plans are anywhere from 20 to 40 pages, and they literally lay out on individual pieces of paper exactly what the mail is going to say and why. One of the things I talked about in my previous lecture today about budgeting is a lot of candidates, not big fans of research and polling. Number one, it's expensive. Number two, I don't need a poll to tell me how my voters feel. Well, that's a load of it's a load of crap, right? Unless you only need, there was a woman on my last call who was running for city council in a very small town, and she needed 500 votes to win. Okay, she might know what her voters want, but the average state legislative seat who needs 10,000 votes to win, there's absolutely no way a candidate knows what all of those people are thinking. No way. And so what happens is they say, I don't want to do a poll, and then they hand me $50 to $80 to $100,000 and ask me to take my best guess. Don't do that. Don't do that, because I'm good, but I really, if you're going to spend $50,000 or more on mail, you got to give me an instrument to make the mail the best it can be, which is when afterwards I lay out the whole strategy. I look at the poll and I say, wow, let's go back to that scenario. In Texas State Leg District A, I see my poll and my swing voters all want to talk about healthcare, not surprisingly. But my lower propensity voting Democrats, my base expansion universe, they actually want to talk about climate change. I'm making this up. But that's a really important thing to know. Why would I want to speak on climate change to my swing voters? They don't care. They want to talk about healthcare. And if I'm talking about healthcare to my base expansion universe, I'm off message. I got to have a roadmap to tell me where to go. And that's what a poll is. And so I read the poll, and I and the other team members say, okay, this is what we need to do to win this race. And I write it all out in a mail plan. It includes pieces, a budget, and a timeline. That's really important, because if I'm handing you a $100,000 mail plan, you're going to want to know when you need to start paying for it. Because if you don't raise that money on time, we have to adjust our plan. Happens all the time, but it's an important thing to know. Campaigns, we don't like surprises, right? They're going to happen. But so many things on a campaign are a surprise. Your budget, your mail plan shouldn't be a surprise. It should be well planned out ahead of time. Plus, and you're going to see this in a minute, in a state legislative campaign, your mail plan is the main form of communication. You plan everything based on when that mail is dropping, okay? So, basic October mail schedule. Basic. Every couple of days, build in repetition.
On the note of repetition, Liz, we have a question, and you may answer it with that next slide. Quinn asked, is there a concern of oversaturation in mail?
Nope.
You can't wear out voters?
Nope. Here's the thing. You can potentially send too much mail. You don't want to send a piece of mail every single day. People will stop looking at it. You do need to space it out a little. But I gave this little speech to my last training, which was candidates, and so I'm going to give it to you. There is no such thing in a political campaign as too much communication. No such thing. And the reason is several-fold. Number one, voters have lives, and most of them hate politics, and most of them don't want to have anything to do with this. God's honest truth, Republicans, Democrats, African-American, Latino, white, men, women, old, young, trust me. If no one has told you this yet, let me be the first to tell you that all of you and me and Cole and everyone else who is spending this beautiful Sunday afternoon on a video chat about this are not normal people. We are hyper partisan, dedicated political people. We actually watch C-SPAN. Normal people don't do that. That's okay. That's who we are, and that's why we're here today. But never, ever, ever think that your voters think about politics the way you do, because they don't. They just don't think about it that way. They don't care until the end. So your job as a campaign is to identify the voters that you need to get to your vote goal, run research and polling to find out what those voters want in their elected official, raise enough money to send messages to those voters saying, my candidate is the right candidate for you based on these issues. And you can't do it enough, and you can't say it enough. I told this story last time. I'm going to tell it again briefly. I had a campaign a long time ago, 2005, where we were running, I mean, you think this is heavy. I mean, every day, phones, mail, doors. I mean, it was an intense and very effective race. We were a Democrat. We were in a Republican seat. It was what it was going to take to win. 8 days out from election day, the campaign manager called me and said, you got to turn it off. People are calling the office and complaining. And I said, okay, do me a favor. Every time someone calls in, have someone write their name and address down on a piece of paper. Tell them you'll handle it. Call me when you get to 10 people. Okay. 3 days later, so 5 days out from election day, they called me back, said, we got to 10. What are you going to do? And I said, absolutely nothing. First of all, we're 5 days out. There's nothing we can do. And secondly, that's actually kind of good news. Call me when you get to 25. 2 days later, they called and said, we got to 25. And I said, awesome. You are so going to win. They won by 22 points. Because what it told me that all 30 plus normal voters had received so much communication that they were actually taking the time to call the headquarters and say, please turn it off, meant that we had hit saturation. We'd gotten their attention. They had heard our messaging, and we won. I will tell you, in 2012, a friend of mine was in charge of GOTV, Get Out the Vote, for the Obama campaign in Nevada. He actually referred to the campaign as annoy everyone until they hate you, but that's how we win campaign. It worked out. But caveat, you got to be on the right message to the right voter. That's the only way it works. All right. So I want to go back. Let's talk timing. All of this, as you can see, is October. You got election day around, I made this up, but November 2nd, which is fairly close this year. You back it up. And so this is the whole month of October, right? But in Texas, you have 3 different ways to access the ballot, as you all know. What about absentee and early vote? In the state of Texas, if you are over the age of 65, you are allowed to vote by mail with no excuse required. And if you only have to request a ballot in Texas as a senior once. So anyone in 2020 who requested a ballot, who was over the age of 65, who requested a ballot for the primary back in March, doesn't have to re-request. They will automatically be sent a ballot roughly around September 22nd. Is that going to change because of COVID? I do not believe so. Those of you in Texas who have been following this, there has already been a state lawsuit in which the state Supreme Court ruled that you could not use fear of COVID-19 as an excuse. There are 2 federal cases that are pending around that issue. I do not think it will affect Texas, because even if the federal courts rule that, yes, you can vote by mail, Attorney General Paxton will appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States. They may or may not hear the case in time to affect the election. In other words, Texans, I don't think you're looking at any different laws around November than you are right now. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. So here's what that means. People over the age of 65 will get a ballot right around September 22nd. But you also have in-person early vote, which means for 2 weeks in the middle of October, people can go vote. And in most of the large counties, Harris, Bexar, Tarrant, Dallas, they can vote in any voting location. They don't any longer have to go to just their precinct. That's important. And then, of course, there's election day. What does that mean? 3 different strategies, okay? Because I want all of you to really look at number 1. This is an important piece of information no matter where you're running a race. You must communicate with a voter every day they have the ability to vote. So if a senior citizen receives a ballot right around September 22nd, you need to be communicating with that senior at that time. And here's the fun part. You may have to keep communicating with them all the way to the end, because you don't know when they will return that ballot. Now, we can get a little bit more into details around that, but that's the gist. Let me tell you a story. My mother is 77. She lives in Houston. She is a diehard Democrat. I'm going to be honest with you guys. And partly because of me and partly because she likes politics, she pays a lot of attention. It irritates my mother to absolutely no end that she doesn't receive voter guides from the Texas Democratic Party or any of the Democratic aligned groups until the end of the election. She's been sitting on her ballot since September 23rd, waiting for that information. Why? Doesn't she know who to vote for? She doesn't know all the judges. In Texas, we elect judges. And in Harris County, there are 50, 100. Mom waits for that voter guide to know who to vote for judge. And if they don't send it to her until the last week of October, she may have given up already and sent her ballot back in. I use her as an example because probably a lot of people doing that. In other words, it's up to the campaign to communicate with the voters when they have the ability to vote. So, see number 3, all of this costs more money. All of it. Let me show you why. That's why. When you are in a state, yes, Cole?
On your last note, before you move on, I wanted to pose a question that Jonathan sent us, and you touched on it beautifully, but I want to ask if you have anything to expand on. Jonathan asked if there is a significant difference in mail strategy for targeting different age groups. And earlier, we had a question that came regarding how to target transient populations like students who move a lot, particularly during the summer, leading up to the fall election, especially if it's in that first semester of the fall.
These are great questions. Mail isn't the perfect medium for everyone. I mean, let's be honest, right? People who are transient, frankly, people who move around a lot, people who may be newly registered, that is something that happens a lot in the cities in Texas. People are moving around, right? So sometimes mail's gonna miss some voters. The key to this is if, as you build your overall campaign strategy and you are looking at your vocal, let me give you an example. Texas House District A, right? 10,000 votes to win. I'm going to pretend this is a Democrat that I work for. That's my safe spot. 10,000 votes to win. Let's say 3,000 of them are going to be hardcore Democratic primary voters who always vote. And on average, they're over the age of 55. Okay? That's that 3,000 person universe I need to go get. They're a pretty good mail universe. They're pretty solid. They're not going to need a lot of touches. Okay? That's only 3,000 people. Then the next 3,000 people are my swing voters, and they're roughly between the ages of 35 and 55, okay? They're a little less transient, right? But maybe a little bit. So I'm gonna want mail, but I'm gonna wanna layer that with what? Probably some digital, probably some phones, right? I'm gonna wanna supplement to that universe because mail's not gonna give me the full coverage. And then let's get to the last 3,000, 3,500 people that we need out of our 10,000 voting coalition. And let's pretend that they're much younger. They are between the ages of 22 and 35, maybe 40, recent college graduates, current students, people who vote sporadically but are in the younger age group. All kinds of people fit into that. Mail may not be the best way to reach them. So maybe you do some mail to them, but frankly, they are going to be much more digitally focused. Maybe they're much more non-COVID times, door-to-door focused. Maybe they're more event focused. Maybe they get an entirely different strategy that you have to come up with to reach them where they are. Because the truth of the matter is, that's one of the biggest problems that we have, both parties, in connecting with younger voters, because their address is not as solid a data point, because God knows they don't have landline phones, right? Everybody's on their phone. Because we may or may not have their phone, access to their phone number, a lot of the more traditional methods are not working. So what do we do? What do you do as a campaign manager? If you're looking at a younger demographic that you know they need to show up for you to win the race, you got to figure that out. You got to meet them where they are. May not be mail, probably digital, texting. There's a program on the Democratic side called Hustle. Hustle is the jam, man. It means volunteers can just start sending text messages to their friends, to whomever they want. It's very fast, it's very automatic, and all of a sudden people are getting text messages. Sounds like maybe that's something, as a Democrat, you may want to look into for that younger demographic. But the key that I want to get through to you is you have to meet voters where they are. A failing campaign tries to get voters to meet the campaign where the campaign is. Voters are never going to do that. They don't, frankly, care enough. It's not that they're dumb. They're not actually dumb at all, but they're overwhelmed and they got a lot going on, especially now. So you got to figure out how to meet them where they are. Does that help, Cole?
That was a wonderful answer. Yeah, thank you so much, Liz. And pop in the chat, guys, if y'all want more information on that.
Okay, so let's do this. All right, let's go back to this. This is big, but I'm going to go here because it's even bigger. Texans, this is what it needs to look like. Why? Because you got absentee votes dropping on the 20th. You got early vote, I'm making this up, starting on the 4th. And then you got election day. You got 3 different parts of the electorate voting at 3 different times, and you never know when they're going to go. Because I tell you what they don't do. They don't call the campaign and go, hey, I voted, thanks for all the mail. You have to stay consistently talking to them for this entire period of time so that you are confident that they have received your message, and when they go vote, whether it's via absentee, early vote, or even on election day, they walk into the voting booth saying, I'm going to vote for blank. That's your job, okay? I'm going to take a breath, because this is a lot, and say, are there any questions? We're doing pretty good on time. It's 3 o'clock.
I have one question here. Are there any best practices for communicating with voters that live, this is a good question, in apartment complexes, specifically for block walking? It's a tough one.
That is a great question. Block walking, as I stated very clearly earlier, door-to-door contact when we're not in a pandemic is always the best way to win a vote, face-to-face. I think there are a lot of reasons for this. But I think the main one is, frankly, as we become even more separate, it is so unique to actually have a face-to-face conversation with an individual now that it's even more powerful. Obviously, in the time of COVID, I want to be real honest with you all. I said this on my last call, and I'm going to say it on this one. It's maybe more of a Democratic thing. I respect the fact that what's happening in our nation right now is breaking down in some cases along political lines. But I want to be really honest. This is what I say to all of my campaigns, not just in Texas, but across the country. There will not be door-to-door in the 2020 campaign cycle. I do not think that there will be a way for campaigns to safely send volunteers out, number one. But even more importantly, I think there will be so many voters who will not want to answer the door to a stranger. I'm just not sure that we're going to see door-to-door in 2020. My caveat is different areas, different strokes for different folks, more rural areas, places that are non-urban. You do you. But I'm telling all of my campaigns, many of which are in Texas, don't plan on it. That's number one. Number two, in better times, as we get into, so apartment complexes are tough. Number one, actually, this just happened to me. Here's a good one. During the primary, I live in Virginia, and we had a March 3rd presidential primary when you all had your presidential. And I live in a very tall 14-story apartment building with a concierge person. Like, nobody gets in unless we let them in, right? But all of a sudden, one day, I'm at home, and someone slid Bloomberg mail, literature, under my door. Now, being me, I was like, what? That's not supposed to be happening. I'm a political person, right? I, of course, am equally as intrigued that it's Bloomberg, right? But, you know. And I thought to myself, how did that happen? So again, being me, I went down to management the next day and I said, look, I'm not mad about this, but I'm super curious. And they said, oh, yeah, we heard about that. Someone in the building did that. In other words, if you're trying to get into an apartment complex, the best thing to do is to recruit someone who lives there and have them potentially recruit other neighbors and basically make that apartment complex your own kind of mini door knocking with people who are already there. Because frankly, they're neighbors. Maybe they already know some of the folks. They're going to be a more trusted voice. Two, you're not going to have as many problems theoretically getting in there. Now, for the record, did I vote for Bloomberg? No. But I actually appreciated that Bloomberg was the only Democratic presidential campaign to figure out how to get me lit. I'll give him that, but it didn't work. How's that, Cole?
Okay. Wonderful answer.
All right. So are there any other questions about this schedule? This is a very intense layered schedule. When I put this up, by the way, I use this slide in lots of trainings, candidates, campaign managers, and every single time everyone's eyes get really big and there's a lot of inhaling and exhaling. And I respect that. This, because I'm going to be very honest with you, in the average state legislative race in the state of Texas, this much communication over this long a period of time is $250,000. Yep. Maybe 200 to 250. But it ain't 50. Sorry, guys. And that, for the record, is why so much of what you hear in these trainings is about money and fundraising. It's not because we're trying to buy votes. It's because we're trying to communicate the message that works with certain segments of voters to those voters in a timely fashion with a lot of repetition behind it. Believe it or not, it's not crooked. There is method to the madness. And I will tell you, the Republicans in Texas, they're good at this. The Democrats have been playing catch up in Texas on this for a long time. We're getting better. But, okay, Cole, any questions or can I move on?
I don't think so at the moment. Oh, I lied.
Oh.
I lied. I got a question from my friend Jonathan. So, and Tyler touched on this earlier. You don't have any Sunday. You have one Sunday on your calendar, but you don't touch Sunday at all.
Wow. Kudos to who said that, because you're right. And there's a reason. Sundays are a game day call. And there's a reason I say that. Number one, there are going to be places in Texas and in other states in which people will be at church and they will be at family gatherings because it is a day of rest. It is the Lord's day. And you know what? You don't want to mess with that. Now, that is true in not inner city. My mother lives in Rice Village, Houston. Okay, for those of you who are from Houston, right? She lives near Rice University. That is not as much, I would say, of a church-going community as some other communities may be in Houston. If somebody was running for state legislature, and actually someone is, in that district, Sundays might be an okay day for them. They will know their district. But in some communities, I don't have to tell you all, Sundays are a sacred day. You got to make that a game day call. Now, I also say game day call because in the state of Wisconsin, this is a true story. You do not door knock when the Packers are playing at home on a Sunday. It's a thing. Now, I kind of made fun of it when I first started working in Wisconsin. I'm like, seriously, Packers aren't even that good this year. Oh, you would have thought. Oh my God. Again, some places, some states, man, they take Sunday very seriously for very different reasons. Sunday is an interesting day. So I advise all of you to do what you feel is best on Sundays in the areas that you are in. Talk to your candidate, talk to your volunteers. In some places, campaigning on Sunday, door-to-door volunteer calls, great. In some places, you may want to rethink it. Also, no mail delivery on Sunday. I know you all know that, but I want to remind you. Post office doesn't work on Sunday. So, all right. Anything else, Cole, or are we going on?
I'm going to combine two questions regarding calendars between Sarah and Samantha. Both folks are asking questions about when your calendar starts. Do you run it over the summer? Do you how early in the campaign do you start this kind of outreach of communications?
You know, it's great questions. So I'm about to do, Cole said in my intro, I am the Democratic Program Director for the Women's Campaign School at Yale. we are actually, because we're not having our in-person training this year, sadly, at Yale, we're doing a series of videos, a video conference call training, just like we're doing here. And I'm doing one on June 9th. So if anybody wants to come, I don't see a problem with it, that talks about the master schedule. The truth is, it's something I should probably start putting into stuff like this. And here's what I mean by that. The truth is, a campaign is an arc, right? From the time you start until the end. So let's pretend, everyone, that you've decided in Texas, you usually filing deadline is at the end of December. So let's pretend that your campaign starts January 1st for November. The first 3 months, all you're going to do is raise money. It's called Q1. Unless you got a primary, we're not even going to talk about that right now. Let's pretend you don't. But all you're going to do is raise money from January to March. That's it. You're going to do. You got to raise a lot of money for people to take you seriously. From March to June, June 1, you're going to raise money, but then you're also going to probably start to hire a little staff and begin to maybe plan summer field operations. No pandemic, okay? Let's pretend COVID never happened. June 1 through September 1st, you will still be raising money, but you will also be running, hopefully, very large field operations. You will be knocking on doors. You will be calling people on the phone. You will begin to build out that voter contact over the summer. And yes, August in Texas is miserable. So you may want to take 2 weeks off in August, but if you don't have the time, because you got to contact those voters, you're going to have to dig in. And then September 1st through, in this year, November 3rd, you're still going to be raising some money, but the hope is by September 1st, you raised 85% of your money, because that's when you start spending it. That's when this starts. So the arc is money, 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 voters, money, voters, money, voters, 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 voters. That's kind of the arc of a campaign beginning in January. You're going to raise money and raise money and raise money until your candidates hate you. But this is why. I have a candidate right now, real quick, in Kentucky. He's a state Senate candidate. He is a lovely man, and he would be an amazing state senator. But he hasn't really raised any money, and his primaries come in June 23rd, and his opponent just placed a cable buy. I don't know if we're going to be able to get him through this primary. So he's learning, unfortunately, in real time what happens when you don't raise money in January. Cautionary tale. All right.
Got one more for you, Liz. Got one more before we move on. And Nancy, I'm going to gloat on you and reveal what Nancy called you. She said that you were one of the foremost individuals in the entire space and one of the best budgeters you can find in campaigns, which I think qualifies you to answer this question better than most folks. How big are your campaigns? Nancy asked, how big are your campaign teams? How many volunteers do you have? How are you making sure everyone is on the same page?
Those are good questions. So funny that I just did the budgeting. It's really a shame. I wish I could call it up. But, all right, let's start with, Cole, you may have to help me out because it was a multi-part question. Number one is remind me again, what was the first part?
How big is the campaign team?
That's a great question. You know, so much goes back to your vote goal. If you have a 10,000 vote goal, 10,000 person individual vote goal, your budget will probably be somewhere around $200,000 to $300,000, frankly, and you will probably need 2 to 3 staff people. Probably only 2. Frankly, they're hard to find. You may only have 1. Most of the legislative races I have in Texas right now have a manager, and that's it. Couple of them have a manager and a field director, because frankly, those candidates raised a lot of money and they had the money to hire those people. So to a certain extent, the size of your staff depends on how much money you've raised, because staff ain't free. Volunteers are tough, especially now, right? But I also think there are a lot of people stuck at home who would be willing to volunteer to do phone calls from home or to do some type of video event, but volunteers are tough. Volunteers have to come through the candidate themselves, friends, family, groups they've been involved with. The strength of a candidate actually often lies in their ability to bring volunteers to the table. How many do you need? As many as you can get your hands on. How do you manage them? Oh, that's a whole nother ball game. Volunteer management so let me go back. On a congressional race where you need 150 to 200,000 votes to win, you're going to have a staff of 5 to 10. You're going to have a $500,000 payroll, but that's because that race is going to cost you $5 million. Yeah, I said that. Most of that's television, but you're still going to have a $500,000 payroll on a congressional race. You're going to have a manager, a finance director, a call time manager, a scheduler, and probably a field and volunteer coordinator. Because there's a lot of moving parts in order to go out and win 150 to 200,000 voters. It's a much different race than a state legislative race. Managing your volunteers on a state legislative race falls to the campaign manager, and it is not easy. It takes constant management, constant communication, and saying thank you so many times you think you're going to vomit. But you have to thank a volunteer about 100 times. I am not making that up, to get them to come back. It's a full-time job. So one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, do you need a lot of volunteers, and do you have things for them to do? And then here's the fun one. Are they things that the volunteers want to do? In the days of door knocking, it's very hard to get a volunteer to go door knocking in Texas in 98-degree weather in July. That's a heck of a volunteer. You're only going to get a few people. We're not really doing that this year. Would more volunteers be willing to make voter outreach phone calls from their homes during this time? Yeah, maybe. That's awesome. But that means you also have to get them the list to call, the scripts of what they need to say to those callers, and the follow-up questions that you need them to ask those callers. Maybe you do a Zoom phone bank where everybody's dialing at the same time and you can watch them all. And if they have questions for you, you can unmute and ask you a question. So much about this pandemic is going back to basics and, frankly, making it up as you go. But you can't not communicate during this time. That's something I just told those candidates. Clock is ticking. November 3rd is coming. Pandemic or no pandemic. Did that answer the question, Cole? I want to make sure I got all the pieces.
I certainly think it did. Yeah, you covered all the bases. And I have one last follow-up question before I let you start sprinting. On your calendar, you have mail written down. Is that the drop date, asks Lacey, or the hit date?
Lacey, great question. And it is the drop date, meaning that is the date that my firm, which you have paid to do this, takes it to the sectional center facility of the United States Postal Service that is closest to your district. But once I do that and I release it into the post office, it's gone. I have no further control over it. Now, I'm very good at my job, and any mail consultant you hire, Republican or Democrat, should be very good at this. But meaning it should be red tagged political mail, and that requires the United States Postal Service to move it within 48 to 72 business hours. Do they? But I also put in tracking so that I've got the whole mailing seated with my candidate, my manager, and anybody else, so that the minute they get the mail, they call me. And if they haven't seen it within 72 business hours, I light the post office up. But the truth is, to your credit, Lacey, imagine that the piece lands to voters 2 to 3 days after these drop dates. And that's why my last drop date is always the Thursday before. In some states, it's Wednesday, because I don't trust the local SCFs to get it there in 48 hours. Nothing is worse than having mail land on or after Election Day. That's just, it hurts to even talk about it. So, hope that answered your question. Hey, Cole, I know we got a lot, but we've got some really fun stuff coming. So I want to make sure we get through it in the time allotted. Cole, I apologize. Remind me, are we on till, obviously I'm Eastern, 4 o'clock or 4:30? What time do we end today?
So here in Central Time, I'll say we have, I'm going to give you a low number. You might not like it. How about 20 minutes or so?
Holy moly. Okay, let's get moving. All right. Works for me. So let's talk about mail, making it look good, right? We've talked about the tactical aspect of it, the voter file, when it needs to go, a little bit about what it needs to say. Let's talk about making it really work in the mailbox, right? That's the whole point. If you're going to spend $100,000 on direct mail, man, you want it to work, right? So let's talk about number one, mail needs good photos. Campaigns do this all the time. They hand me $100,000 to do mail, but won't spend $3,000 on a photo shoot to make that mail look good. That is stupid. You want to make sure you have great photos so that when a voter sees a mail piece, they go, oh yeah, that looks like someone I want to vote for. Never skimp on photography. Do not let your neighbor who once took a community college photography class to take your photos. If your neighbor is a professional photographer who shoots for the Dallas Morning News, they can do it. Other than that, you need to hire a professional. Take posed and candid shots. You're going to see some examples of this in a minute. Look like yourself. Okay, this is a Texas thing. Listen up, Texans. Knock it off with the matching outfits and the family shots. I don't know what that mess is all about. And Republicans, you're really bad about it, but knock it off. It makes you look stupid. Frankly, it makes you look a little bit like a Stepford family. It doesn't work. Don't do that shit. Stop. Yeah, I said it. I said the S word. Don't do it. It's a personal thing with me. My mother, God love her, loves to collect all the mail she gets in Houston, write notes on it, and send it to me. So if you think I haven't seen 10 years worth of crappy direct mail coming out of the state of Texas, then, and I've seen it, and knock it off with the matching family outfits. Okay, I'm done. All right, you should try to shoot. That's one of that and my yard sign soapbox. We're not doing yard sign soapbox day unless you want to. You should try to shoot to plan. Remember I wrote out that big plan? Well, in it, I'm going to say things like candidate talking with neighbors, candidate with family, candidate talking to a nurse. Those are all called call-out shots, and I would love to have enough time to actually come into your district and take those shots with a professional photographer so that the mail just sings. All right, moving on. See, told you we were getting a little bit more fun. You guys have been waiting for the good stuff. These are examples of really awesome photography, some of which I took, not me. I art directed. I had a professional photographer do it. I am not a professional photographer. Some is as you can see, personal photographs, which I used to make a point. See the middle? I'm proud to have served my country. That's Matt Biggs. He ran for city council in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He was also a Marine sniper in the Iraq War. That is an actual shot taken by one of his Marine buddies as he was reloading in Afghanistan. That's a powerful photograph. That is the power of photography. If you look to the right, you can see, this always makes me sad, this state senator from Iowa, this was 2004, and he has since passed away. He was a lovely man. But if you look on the right-hand side, that's a photograph of him next to a tank in Korea. That's a cool photo, right? So that is the power of using old photographs, of using photographs that I couldn't take, but that show a voter what that candidate is really made of. Then, if you look at some of these other photos, I art directed these. See the one to the far left of Stephen Horsford. He's a congressman from the 4th District of Nevada who's in a little bit of trouble. He's not my client anymore, but I digress. And I love this family shot. You know how flippin' hard it is to get 5 people, including a 4-year-old, to smile and look cute? We took 2,000 shots of that, but I got it, and it is gorgeous. They are the Cosby family, when the Cosby family was a good thing, right? This is a great shot. See this big dream start early? We shot this. We bought those t-shirts. This was in a Virginia State Senate race. Obviously, these are 2 public Virginia universities. We took about 2,000 shots of that before we got it too. That was probably 10, 15 years ago. Those kids may actually be in college by now. But a friend of mine received this as a voter, completely coincidentally, and said, it's the only piece of mail that ever made her cry. I can work with that. So, power of photography.
We're running short on time, but there's a slight uprising in the chat. Folks need to know your stance on yard signs.
Oh my God, really?
Including our very own Tyler Norris.
Okay. All right, you ready? Let's get real. I just did this rant. So if Nancy Bosker were here, she would laugh. She says this is her favorite rant. Let me be very clear with all of you. Yard signs hold a special place in candidates' hearts. It is a place that should be held by fundraising, but it's not. It's held by yard signs. Yard signs don't win races. Yard signs are actually kind of stupid. Yard signs will consume so much of your time and way too much of your money when you should be spending your time and money on more important things like actually talking to voters. But oh no, your candidates will become obsessed. So there is one time when a yard sign matters. One, you see me? One time, not two, one. And that is when it is in the yard of a voter, which has to be part of a very well-planned, coordinated field operation where you've actually called or knocked on that voter's door, and that voter has said to you, oh yes, I'm for Jane Doe for state senate, and you say, that's great. Would you like one of Jane Doe's yard signs in your yard? And the voter says, I would love one. And you say, I'll have it to you tomorrow. And you bring them a yard sign, and you help them, by the way. Don't just leave it. Put it in the flipping yard. That's an endorsement. That makes sense. But that is a multi-step, planned out program. And less than 5% of the people you talk to will let you do that. Okay? But here's what your candidates are going to want to do. They're not going to want to do call time. They're not going to want to raise money. So they don't have enough money to actually do the things that matter, like communicating in the mail or over the radio or on digital, right? They're going to want, at the very end, they're going to panic, and they're going to buy a whole bunch of yard signs, and they're going to put them all over medians, and they're going to think that works. That does not work. That is called a Hail Mary. And even though every now and then someone catches a Hail Mary and wins the game, I think we're all in agreement that it's never a good long-term play. So as managers, here is your job. Number one, you buy 500 yard signs. That's it. And when they're gone, they're gone. And when your candidate goes, I want more yard signs, you say, that's tough. Go make phone calls and knock on doors. And if you put them at the corner of Main and Plum, you have littered. And you have not advanced your cause, and you have not helped your candidate.
There's a virtual round of applause right now. Folks are typing in all caps, Liz.
Now, can I tell you guys something really funny? I literally just gave this same rant to a bunch of candidates, actual candidates. And, you know, on the veterans campaign training I did before this with Nancy. Nancy loves this rant too. And one of the people on the call, just like this one, it was fewer people, she popped up and she said, so it turns out she was the local county party chair. She wasn't going to run, but she was the county party chair. I don't know what party, doesn't matter, or where, doesn't matter. And as I gave this speech, she texted one of her candidates to say, you cannot order 2,000 yard signs. Do you hear me? And the candidate said, no, I want my yard signs. I'm telling you, it's a thing. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's hard not to do it, but don't do it. And that's my rant. All right, moving on. Mail must connect. Come on, guys, we're having fun. We're running out of time. It must connect with voters' lifestyle and goals. Look, if you all learn nothing else from me today as managers, let me be very clear with you. I'm going to give you messaging 101. Campaigns are not about candidates. They're not about ideas. They're about voters. They're about the voters' fears, anger, hopes, dreams, concerns. They are not about a candidate, okay? That is a really crucial piece of information, especially for the candidates, okay? Second, see the number 3? It shows a candidate is motivated by something other than political ambition. Guys, we hear a lot these days about authentic messaging and candidates with authenticity. Number 3 is what that means, right? What does authentic actually mean? We're all real people, but most voters do not believe that anyone who would run for office is a good person. And frankly, it doesn't matter if they're Democrats or Republicans. They think they're crooked, crazy people who are never going to do anything for them. And therein lies your biggest problem as a manager, how you get your voters past that barrier to believing that your candidate is actually someone who cares about them and will do the right thing for them. And it starts with showing that they're motivated by something other than ambition, which really starts with their personal story. And it really plays into that photography. Look at that picture of that young man who was a Marine sniper That photo alone should have shown all of his voters that whether they agreed with him politically or not, this is someone who was willing to put his life on the line for his country. That says a lot about him. That is what you have to do when you are doing any type of messaging, but particularly in the mail, okay? All right, we're getting through this. Here you go, it's one of my faves. This guy is a state rep in Georgia. So he can't help himself from, see at the bottom where he's in a suit. I hate that shot. He made me do that. But I lost that battle, but I won the war, meaning the piece is still more about him and who he is and what motivates him. And I'm very proud of the photography and the overall, we got his suit state representative in there, which annoyed me, but I'm still overall proud of the message of this piece. This piece hopefully makes him likable. That's the goal. All right, things to avoid. These are fun, guys. Hang in there with me. Things to avoid. Too many words, fakey feel, all about the candidate. Ugh. Yes, this is a real piece of mail. Oh no, I just saw Cole Wentz. Get better. Look, there's the inside. Here's the front and back. Here's the inside. Let's do it again. Beyond the obvious, what's wrong with this piece graphically is there's nowhere for the eye to rest. There's no way for the reader to ingest anything, okay? This not only violates my rule of one message, one piece, which I think is coming in a minute, but is just god-awful. This was a waste of everyone's time and everyone's money. It's a damn shame. Oh, yes. One of my competitors did this. So this piece is a hit piece on Republicans, on education. What the heck does this have to do with education? This man's riding a stick horse. You got 5 seconds of a voter's time to tell them, I hate to tell you, to tell them what to do, right? To show them what your candidate is, to show them what the opponent isn't. No, too many people try to be too cute for school. This is too cute for school. This misses the mark. This is a waste of money. Ah, yes, my favorite, the president of Facebook. This gentleman was a Democrat who ran for judge in Houston. What about this says judge? The thing about running for judge, and we don't do that in every state, but we do it in Texas, is that it's actually one of the few places or a few times where your education matters. Going to Harvard Law School actually matters to voters when you run for judge. It doesn't make you sound elitist, it makes you sound smart. And that's what they want in a judge. This guy, on the other hand, decided that he would put photographs of himself with every Democratic leader in the city of Houston on a piece of mail because somehow that qualified him to be judge. He lost. And then there's this one. I still don't know what this means. This was actually against one of my candidates in Nevada in 2008. I won. I still don't know what it means. She's invisible. Oh, okay. I don't even know what those quotes are. Too many words, too cute for school, misses the mark, okay? Remember, not about your candidate or you. It's about the voters. Ah, I came to the end. I didn't show you the good stuff. Ah. Okay, bye. Just kidding. All right, Cole, what else we got?
Liz, I gotta let you know, the chat is if you could hear it, we got he lost, sips tea, you're dragging them. Folks are excited. You're killing it.
I'm so.
Here's a question. What should and shouldn't go on a piece of mail in terms of content? You covered a lot of that. Is there anything that really should go? If you're sitting down with the candidate and you say, you gotta have this, you gotta have this. You have a one and then one that absolutely you cannot put in that, sir, ma'am?
Yeah. All right. You know what I'm noticing, and probably because I was trying to get a lot done, I don't have a lot of good mail in here. So let's rest on this piece for a moment, okay? What needs to be in a mail piece? Well, there are the logistics, all right? Let's talk about the logistics first, guys. This is important. See this? Paid for Friends of Scott Holcomb? That's the law. You got to put a disclaimer on there, and you got to have a return address or the post office won't mail it, okay? So let's talk about the boring but important shit. Disclaimer, return address. What you can't see is Democrats. All right, we're all my Democrats. You got to print union. Republicans find this funny. That's fine. But we're Democrats and we support our unions and we print union, which means this is a pre-printed piece. This is my designed piece, but when it was done, there'd be a little bug here, a little union bug. And if you don't know what that looks like, I'll see if I can find one. But Democrats, we print union. Write it down. Don't mess that up. All right. Now, what else do you need? You can see, you definitely need website, right? It's kind of everywhere, right? Look at this down here on Follow Us. I got Facebook. I got Twitter, right? On some of my newer races, I've got Instagram. Okay, I think this is from a few years ago. So you absolutely want to make sure that you have those elements. But let's talk about the other stuff. So see this, vote for Scott Holcomb for state rep, vote for Scott Holcomb for state rep. Those are called taglines. They're also a call to action. All great advertising, doesn't really matter what you're advertising, has a call to action. So some of my most favorite, go buy this car, right? I mean, guys, next time you're watching television advertising or OTT or whatever ads, I know they get to you somehow, whatever ads you see, think to yourself, what is the call to action of this ad? What do they want me to do? Drink this beer, buy this car. I don't know, vote for this person, right? Voting is one of the best and easiest call to actions. Go vote for this person. And then there's the other one. Don't vote for this person. Some messed up calls to action. A lot of advocacy groups mess this up. So for those of you who may be out there doing advocacy and nonprofit stuff, learn more is not a call to action. Okay? And you see that a lot. Learn more. www. That's not a call to action. That's a waste of time. But go to www. blah, 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 and join my email list, or donate money, or give blood. Those are calls to action, because a call to action is what you are telling the person to do by reading this, looking at this, ingesting this. It's an important point. So vote for, you got to have it on here, right? And then, as you can tell, my jam is big emotive photographs, because as you already know, I'm a big fan of the power of photography, but then more importantly, big, clear headlines. Voters take on average 3 to 5 seconds to read a piece of mail. That's it. And that's on a good day. And then they throw it away. 3 to 5 seconds. If you make it too complicated, you're going to lose them. So all this text, does anybody read it other than the candidate, the candidate's mother, the candidate's wife, and the mail consultant? It's important, right? It's accurate, it's been spell checked, and it's on message, but it's not the point of the piece. The point of the piece are the headlines and the photos. And so let me ask this, Cole, see if anybody answers in chat. What is the point of this piece? Anybody saying anything?
Got Hunter's telling us it's name recognition. Samantha thought it was also, no, Hunter said this is a family man. Samantha suggested it's name recognition. Our friend from Tarrant County says name recognition to message. Taylor, he's just like you. I'm going to start reading him. Name recognition to be relatable, to show he's a real person.
Good. You can stop. Thank you, Cole. Thank you very much.
Oh my gosh. It's awesome. Somebody
blew up. Okay. Name recognition, yeah, but no. It's name recognition is a little bit of a misnomer, because it's not the name, it's what the name means to you. Because I could say name recognition, who's got high name recognition? Donald Trump. That name's gonna mean something different to person A than to person B. Might be good, might be not so good, right? So name recognition, but it's more about what you're trying to get the name to mean. In which case, Cole, the folks who said family man, nice guy, works for you. That's what we were going for, right? Now, if this was his only piece of mail, that would have been fine. This guy had a 12-piece mail program. Well, he's a white Democrat in a Republican seat. He's actually one of the few in Georgia. We fight hard for this seat every year for Scott Holcomb. But part of it is people see him as a family man who's hardworking, and he may be a little liberal, but he's always there for them. And we worked very hard to build that brand for him over the last 10 years, usually with 10 to 15 mail pieces a cycle, right? So, all right. Any other questions? I don't know. You tell me, Cole, you're in charge of my time. You tell me how much more time we have or what we're doing. I feel guilty. I feel like I should get out of this PowerPoint and go get one with more of my mail samples in it, but then everybody would watch all my crazy. So
Tell you what, if you want to throw that on Slack, we got tons of folks on Slack already. You can put it there, and folks can reach you, Liz, on Slack Monday at 1 p.m. Central Time.
Right. We're doing this thing on Monday. Oh, yeah. Hey guys. Hey, real quick. You want to see something kind of fun? This is my budget presentation from earlier. If people you see the schedules. Hey, here's a fun one. Look at here, guys. Things not to spend money on. If anybody in this class does fly swatters or jar openers or coffee mugs, I will know and I will come for you.
Pot holders, that's a good one.
Oh my God. Do you know I have samples of all of this? So does Nancy Bosker. But we've already done yard signs, and you also have to do bumper stickers and lapel stickers because you got to keep your volunteers and your supporters happy.
That's incredible, Nancy. I'm so sorry. That's incredible, Liz. Kept saying Nancy. On that note, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up for the day and say, okay. If our attendees have questions, put them on Slack. Yell at Liz on Slack. Thank you so much for your time, for your energy, and your expertise. I cannot thank you enough. I'm going to take it. Say again.
I'm sorry. Say again, Cole. I didn't mean to interrupt.
You go ahead.
No, I just want to say to all of you, I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person this year. I think it's amazing that Strauss does this. I've trained for Strauss in this program for many, many years. It's a labor of love. It's the only university I'll still train for is the University of Texas at Austin. Hook 'em horns. And I hope all of you go out, run campaigns, do good things.
Thank you so much, Liz.
You're very, very welcome. Have a great day.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the conclusion of our live portion of Campaign Bootcamp. Thank you so much for y'all's interaction, your time, your questions, y'all's being here, staying engaged, staying active. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't forget, you can find our worksheets on our website. There's a link to that already in the chat. There will be another one in the near future. Stay on our Slack channel. I know Matt's on there right now. Throw some questions for Liz and her Slack channel before Monday. Let them rest there, and she can start tackling them. Monday, 1 p.m. All of our presenters will be on Slack for some office hours. Reach out to me with any questions. My emails and every invitation, every email you received this morning, yesterday morning, Friday evening. Respond to that and it'll come to my inbox. I hope you learned something and have the opportunity to use these skills you've gathered. Stay in touch, reach out to our mentors, get on that Q&A. Turn in your worksheets via our website before midnight on Tuesday. Again, top 3 of the teams or individuals will be shouted out on our social media, and you'll have the availability to run around and tell your friends you're the cream of the crop at Campaign Bootcamp. Also, got to finish up all 4 if you want to hang out with us at Texas Tribune. I hope to see a number of y'all at TribFest with us. Reach out if you need anything. Stay in touch, and thank you for your time. Be safe and have a lovely rest of your weekend.